Hey, everybody, welcome. We're at the top of the hour here, and welcome to today's Tech Canada's Deeper Insights webinar. My name is Tracy Campbell. I'm a Chair Support Advisor here at Tech Canada, and it's my pleasure to be your host for today's session. Today, we are honored to feature Mike Lindstrom, a true expert in mindset, language, and patterns. With a profound understanding of successful habits and true change, Mike has been instrumental in guiding individuals and organizations towards transformative growth. In this insightful webinar today, Mike will unravel the keys to successful habits and true change, focusing on mindset, language, and patterns. Remember, all of our Tech Canada Deeper Insights webinars are recorded and live and interactive. So whether you're joining us live on Zoom or through our social media channels, be sure to share your questions and comments to receive tailored insights from Mike. Without further ado, let's extend a warm welcome to Mike Lindstrom as he shares keys to successful habits and true change. Welcome, Mike.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. The opportunity to speak to everybody today. It's been a long time coming, actually. We originally were going to do this in February, and we moved it back a couple of weeks. So it's been on my mind for, gosh, at least 6 weeks. And this is actually one of my favorite topics. It just full disclosure, I spend so much time with my clients in real time about the things that are current. Like, what are the things that are really hot with the sales team, with the leadership team? So for the last 6 months, a lot of it's been around AI, virtual training, virtual leadership. I mean, those have been the hot topics that I spent so much time on the last few months, but I've been doing this for 25 years. This event today and the content reminds me of where I first came. When I first got out of law school, my first position in this industry, personal development, was a gentleman you've probably all heard of, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins was actually my first boss. And this stuff that we're going to talk about today is one of the first things I learned in personal development. And I'm excited to share it because we've gotten away from it. AI and ChatGPT, we'll talk a little bit about that today and how it influences this topic. And I've been spending a lot of my time, honestly, this year in 2024, the last couple months, researching it, digging in with the new ChatGPT version 4.0 that came out, which is incredible. If you don't have it, it's worth the money to go find and play and learn how to prompt it in every way, shape, and form. Leadership, how do you communicate with email? All these 3 things that we're talking about, which is mindset, language, patterns. So this is where I learned pure communication when it comes to coaching, when it comes to parenting. Of course, at the time I wasn't a parent. Now I've got 2 boys, so I use this all the time. Leadership, not just within your group at your company, but also in the community. Everything that you do touch, it's communication. So when we go through this, I want you to be thinking along the lines of your identity and the things that you could work on today to help you to get to that next level, as I always talk about. So this is a topic, it's near and dear to me. So if you could, we are going to be utilizing the chat. I'm going to get some help. I do what are called stop points throughout. So maybe 10 or 15 minutes, we'll do a couple chunks, stop, open questions up. And at the very end, we'll open it up for full Q&A. So each piece, kind of mindset, language, patterns, we'll do a quick pause. So keep the questions coming in the chat. When I get going, I fire hose. So that's why I have my team behind me to let me know when we have questions. So before we get started, I want to start off with something. There's a question, and I want to pose this because, and I'm going to say this very, very specifically. I actually wrote it down just to make sure I get this right. So I'm a big fan of the journal. What's written is real. When you write stuff down, you remember the stuff. No different in my world. Same thing with coaching. Same thing with learning. And the question is this, and I'm going to pose this to everybody that's listening today. What is the one thing that you must change immediately? What is the one thing that you must change immediately? And then you got to fill in the blank. In my career, in my work, at home, right? You can find something today, just one thing that you want to change, because identifying these 3 elements and how they tie together, and you just focus on that one thing. Look, we all know we need to be better. I call them the pillars of your life: family, friends, career, faith, spiritual. These are things, leisure, mental health. These are things that uphold you, pillars. So we could always pick probably one thing, at least in each area of our life. Health and fitness. We could always eat better. We could always go to the gym more, right? Be more mindful. We could spend more time with our families. Career, we can always do more. So for today, I want you to be very selfish, and I want you to think about yourself. Whatever identity you think of yourself in, I want you to think, what is that one thing that must change? Now, notice I'm using these words very particularly, because that's what we're going to talk about. When we talk about language patterns of words. They affect our emotional state. If I said something like, think about something that you should change. Shoulds are horrible, right? Those are the things that you're probably going to get to in your mind, but you're probably not going to. I run this joke when I do live events, when you have a live audience that can engage. We've talked about this here. It's called shoulding on yourself. Shoulding. When you're shoulding on yourself, it means you're not doing the things that you say you do. They stack up. So we turn shoulds into musts. I've been teaching this for years, but I want you to think about one thing that must change immediately. And as we go through these three things, the goal at the very end of this is to create what I call a higher level of consciousness. Conscious is just an awareness. We call it sensory acuity. We call it heightened awareness. It's a consciously aware thing that you're doing constantly. We're thinking at 1,200 words a minute, depending on what studies you read. So thinking about maybe if you're a leader, maybe there's somebody on your team that you don't interact with well. Maybe it's at home. I know I'm a teenager, so I'm always thinking about these three things and how I can be a better communicator and use better words to empower him as he's going through, being a freshman in high school. We all remember going through those tough times in our life when we're learning and we're growing, and it's peer group. And now we have things like social media and the cell phones and all the things that are distracting to a teenager that maybe we didn't have. So everything that you say, you do, the things that you be to a child, to the teammates that you work around you, so critically important. So I want you to think about that one thing and how you can apply a couple of these things today. And that's my takeaway at the very end. Is challenging you to think about a couple of things that you could do immediately. So I love this subtitle, Keys to Successful Habits and True Change. I love when we start off with, when you think about language patterns, it's really four things in this intersection point. I call it the intersection point. It's where you create a model. So I created this visual, which is really 4 points. So you have language, right? You have mindset, you have patterns. Patterns are behaviors. That's how you act. And then you have the result. So anytime that you can look at that model, you can look at somebody's mindset, what are they thinking about? Then you can ask, what do they say, not just to themselves, what do they say out loud? And then how do they behave? How do they show up? You create a model. And this is something that we can all model just about anybody in their life. It could be somebody that you look up to. I had an exercise with a big insurance company here recently, and I had all the producers that were not in that top tier. And I said, look, if you're getting the sales chart every month and there's people ahead of you, 10 people, 5 people, 25 people, whatever the number is, these are people that are outperforming you on sales. These are the people you can pick up the phone and apply this process. Just get on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes and start to ask powerful questions. You've probably heard this before, right? The quality of questions you ask yourself is equal to the quality of the relationships you have. It's equal to the quality of life you have. So if you're the kind of person that's asking bad questions, you have bad self-talk, you're probably getting those similar results. So when you are able to interview 15 minutes, somebody that's got a great model because they're great at what they do, you got to listen to the words that they pick. You get to think about the behaviors they do. When do they wake up? When do they go to bed? What kind of questions did they ask when they're in a sales presentation? What are things they do? Are they active listeners? Do they take notes in meetings? Sometimes people don't. People are over there on a tablet. Some people use PowerPoint. Whatever their behavior is, you start to model those things. So as you're thinking about the one thing today, I want you to think about that one result, the thing that you can measure. That's usually a clue. And I joke with this, but it's the truth. The scale doesn't lie. Most people, and I know we don't have time to do a full show of hands, but most people don't get out of the shower every morning, right? Dry off totally naked, and you step on the scale and you say, I'm perfect. I've arrived. That number is exactly what I want it to be. Most people don't do that. You're always nitpicking yourself. Oh my gosh, there's a little something here, or I've got a belly here, or I'm not my fighting weight, or maybe I looked a certain way before I had kids. This is all self-talk. We talk to ourselves. We don't forgive ourselves. We're hard on ourselves. We don't give ourselves grace. We can all find one thing that we have about ourselves that we want to change. And I always pick on the body because it's easy. And one of the top issues you could look at whether it comes to New Year's resolutions, which I'm not a fan of. I'm a big fan of goal setting and planning. Resolutions are things you just resolve and you just move on. Lent, if you celebrate Lent, that just happened a few weeks ago on February 14th. People give up things. You can go study this. Just use ChatGPT if you don't believe me. Top things people give up on Lent. Top things that people do in New Year's resolutions. Top things surround their body. They surround things like their weight, the things they eat, getting to the gym, being more disciplined. So when I say the scale doesn't lie, I use that in reality, but it's also a metaphor. So if you think your sales number is not where it wants to be, or if you're a CEO, you're a leader of an organization, you're meeting with your E-team, and you're sitting there going around the room and talking about, you know what, gosh, 3 weeks is the end of Q1. March 31st ends Q1, fiscal Q1. Our numbers are not on track, whether you're looking at EBITDA, profitability, top line revenue, sales in general. You're looking at something that's usually measurable. You can usually identify one area where the results is not where you want to be. So that's where we start. So when we're going through this, I want you to tie it back to that one thing that you want to influence or that you want to change by using one of these 3 things. Now, if you want to be an overachiever and attack all 3 things and say, you know what, I'm going to work on the mindset part, I'm going to clean up the language part, and I'm going to work on this pattern behavior thing. You put those things together. That's why I have this visual. It's an intersection of those 4 points. Very important. All right. So let's get down to it. So I love this quote. There's so many different iterations of this, but I picked this quote on purpose. But when you look at this quote, there's a couple things in here in the language, the language to pick on. So if you think about the change and you think about in your life, the things that you need to change in the way that you're being, I think it was E.E. Cumming who had a quote one time, and it was like, I can't hear the words that are coming out of your mouth because I see who you're being. I can't hear the words that are coming out of your mouth because I see who you're being. Another way of saying it is that person sees some incongruence in you. They see how you live your life. They see your behaviors. They see that you don't walk your talk. That they don't see mind, body, and soul aligned. They see things that are incongruent. So when you see incongruences, and we all see them, I even read a study recently that our pets, dogs, I have 3 wiener dogs, they can pick up on your energy. They know when you're in a bad mood. They know when you're not yourself. Okay, this is like a sense that we put out there. It's a vibe. So when we don't have a good vibe about who we are, there's usually it's something that's going on inside of ourselves, whether it's something that's in our head because we talk about it, or it's something that we be. So I start off with the concept of being. So when you think about the change and choice, we have a choice in that. And it's a choice that we choose to make it mean something different. Now, my personal development geeks out there, if you've done a lot of seminar work, if you've done any of Robin's work, you've done any of like even Maxwell and leadership, those are great programs. If you're in sales, you've done Sandler. There's a lot of programs out there that you may have been to. Somehow, some way they tie back to this. They may have different words or they pick different, vernacular that they may copyright or trademark, but it really comes down to 2 words that you're never going to trademark, that you're never going to copyright, and that's choice and meaning. People don't make you mad. People don't make you sad. They may do things that trigger that emotion, but it's your choice right there. When the event comes at you, once you read that text, once you read that email, you have a choice to say, okay, what does this mean? What does this mean? Because I know I feel upset right now. I know I'm frustrated. I want to respond to this right now. And I don't know what I'm going to say about this because my emotional state is just overtaken. You have a choice. So when you make it mean something different, you create that choice. It's 2 stop signs that take place when things happen to you on a daily basis. If you don't believe me, just try today. When you go about your average day today, just pick today, for example, because we're starting off today, this morning, midday, something's going to happen. You're going to get a text. You're going to get an email. Someone's going to call you and it's kind of vague. You're not really sure. It could even be as simple as a caller ID. I had one this morning. Caller ID came through. And the first thing I did is I'm thinking, okay, why are they calling me? What is going on here? This is maybe not positive, maybe. So that all happens humanistically in split seconds, just by the trigger of seeing a name on a text or a name and I haven't even picked up the phone to see what it is. So this is where you step in and say, okay, right, Mike, it's 7:30 in the morning. You haven't even really started your day yet. This call came in right here. You don't know if this is good news or bad news. You're getting mental about it. This is what you teach, right? Choice and meaning. When you're prepared to listen to the voicemail or talk to this person, you're in a good mental state, or as I call it, more a peak state to take the phone call. Turns out, by the way, it was nothing big. It was a neutral piece of information. I thought it was going to be negative because this project we're working on, but your brain naturally goes there. Let yourself do it. It's called being human. But once it crosses over into the mind, right? You see it, you hear it, you smell it, you feel it. These are the senses. And when you have that sensory that comes into your mind, and now it's something you can't unring. I saw the name on the phone. I can't unring the bell. I go back and I say, okay, what is it that I'm going to make this mean right now? So I want to start off with this quote, because I think it's a really powerful quote as we go into the three elements. All right. So let's go into mindset. I call this the success equation. One of my friends, who I would call a pessimist, he learned this 4 steps in an event of mine years and years ago. And he said, Mike, isn't it safe to say that the way you teach this, couldn't this also be called the failure equation? And he's right. You could call it the failure equation. So if you're failing at something, this are the 4 steps you would apply. I just like to think about, if you're going to succeed in something and you're going to create a model that's powerful moving forward, you don't want to typically focus on your failure. You want to reframe that, right? That's the concept of choice and meaning. So you say, okay, what's the life experience? What happened? Now, as soon as something happens, your brain kicks in and says, okay, I'm going to create a belief here. I'm going to create a belief about, let's say this webinar, for example. Maybe you didn't know what this was going to be. You're like, yeah, what the heck? I'll tune in for an hour, see what I get out of it. But now we're here. So we're 15 minutes in. Something's happening right now. A life experience is happening. Now, as I'm talking, your brain's taking it in and you're starting to attach meanings to it, good, bad, or indifferent. And then you're going to develop a belief. Your belief might be curiosity. Your belief might be judgment. Your belief might be you're taking notes because there's something, that one thing that's sticking in your head that you want to address. And then you're going to get off of this in 45 minutes and you're going to go behave. You're going to go out to the world, go back to your normal self, right? Go back to your work, go back to your family. And now you have a choice. You can say, you know what, I'm going to work on this. This thing is not serving me. I've got to address this with this individual. I've got to apologize. I've got to forgive. I just need to create maybe a communication nexus point with somebody on one of my teams. It could be somebody in your personal life. I was working with teenagers at an event 2 weeks ago. These were 12, 13, and 14-year-olds, and we were talking about forgiveness. And we did a show of hands. How many people in here have somebody in their life they need to forgive? Every single hand went up, myself included. And I said, why is it that we don't forgive, right? What happens? All the mindset stuff kicks in, right? These are choices and these are meanings. The cool part, after the sharing gets done, everybody's tasked with getting out of this event and picking up the phone and reaching out proactively to someone in their life. And let me tell you, when you listen to 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, they're so pure. They're going through so many challenges, so many struggles at school, being accepted, social media, TikTok, being bullied on social media, things I certainly didn't have to deal with when I was their age. So my empathy and my compassion is so strong when I'm listening to them. But these are things that go on inside our mind. Again, 1,200 words a minute, just doing something. That's a behavior, but you have to first believe it. Once they had the life experience of having the discussion, they started believing different and say, you know what, maybe if I pick up the phone, they're creating an entirely new life experience by giving forgiveness. Now their belief shift. And guess what? Their behavior changes. They realize, you know what, I've been holding on to this for so long. Why didn't I forgive this person before? When you're holding on to something, it's only detrimental to you. You have to let it go. And then what happens, of course, at the very end is the result. So if you're not liking the result of the interaction, of the communication that you have with someone else, you have to look at this equation as a sequence. First starts with a life experience, then you create a belief, then there's the behavior, then there's a result. Now, most people start at the very end. They start at the bottom and say, okay, I don't like my results. I stepped on the scale, Mike. Don't like the results. I'm going to back up the equation and say, why is it that I'm not getting the results, whether it's at the gym, with myself, with my confidence, public speaking, presenting, whatever that result is that's not there, you back up the equation and say, okay, well, what's your belief system? And then you start examining and say, okay, what is my self-talk? So when we get into language, this is important to be able to consciously be aware. Now, if you think about awareness, the easiest way, I learned this a long time ago, and there's many models you may have seen. You think about the lowest form of awareness, it's the first step of awareness, is where you're unconsciously incompetent. Unconsciously incompetent. Another way of saying it is, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. It's just out of your consciousness. It's not in the realm. It's not even in your headspace whatsoever. You've never even experienced it, so it's not even a memory. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to start learning a little bit about myself. Like today, you're going to say, I'm going to go learn this stuff, mindset, language patterns. Before I got on here today, I was probably at that level, Mike, unconsciously incompetent, didn't know much about it. I hear about it, but I don't really know much about it. But now I listen to you. Now I'm going to go on ChatGPT. I'm going to go on Google. I'm going to go read some books on this, and I'm going to be conscious to it. I'm going to be aware of my lack of awareness. So that's a consciousness, but you're still incompetent. Still don't have the stuff licked. You're not masterful at your language or your beliefs, but now you're consciously aware of that. So now you say, I'm going to keep studying, keep reading. I'm going to read books. I'm going to watch podcasts. I'm going to spend my time, instead of watching trashy social media or watching Netflix at night, I'm going to watch biographies, or I'm going to watch something different at night that's going to feed my brain in a positive way. And I'm going to do this every day for a month, 30 days. I'm going to create a new habit. Filling your head with trash and headspace, you're going to fill it with positive things. Now, what are you doing? You're raising your next level, which is consciously competent. So now you're becoming competent at this thing called mindset language patterns, or personal development, or self-talk, because now you're conscious to it. Now, when you've done this for a long time, now there's no rule on this. I've said this for a while. People say, oh my gosh, when you do something for 21 days, you create a new habit. That's not true. 30 days, that's not true. Now, you may feel like you're getting that direction. Most of the people I've interacted with, like my therapist friends, people that are psychs, people that are doctors, PhDs in this stuff, there's a lot of readings on this. It takes many, many days. It's not just go do something for 21 days or 28 days or 30 days. It's got to be month in, month out. So when you have a conscious competence that's so high, 2, 3 months. Now, 90 days, you come back to me. And most of my coaching programs, I do 101 or 3 to 6 months. And there's a reason why. Because I don't see that shift start to take place until about 2 or 3 months. Now, at 2 or 3 months, the shift starts taking place massively. Now you start to create normalcy with that new habit. Unconscious belief. That's usually what happens at month 4, 5, and 6. Usually at month 6, people go, you know what? I think I've got this. Now, I don't have it done forever because we're human. We're going to resort backwards. We're going to have triggers, as they're called. They're going to have people that come in their life. They're going to have negative experiences to try to draw them back to that thing they were prior to this 6 months. So understanding this equation is a constant. Now, if you're an employer, you're a leader, you're a manager, you have people that work for you, this is a great coaching model. When I have somebody that's in a coaching situation and you want to coach an employee or a teammate, these are the 4 steps I follow. I use this in my technical coaching. I start off with step 1. So, hey, I'll make it up. My friend John, because he's down the other hall. John, what are the results here? Tell me in your opinion, what are the results? They speak openly about how they see their results. It's a chance to listen and learn how they view it. You're also listening for language patterns and how they view it. Word choice is usually a trigger there. And then I say, well, what's the behavior day in, day out that's causing these poor results? What would you say? And they tell me. I'm saying, okay, well, what's your belief? If you say that, you're kind of a veteran and things should come to you naturally and you haven't really engaged in relearning some things, whether it's technology, because, as I've heard before, I'm an old dog and I don't need to learn new tricks. That's a limiting belief, right? Maybe we need to challenge your belief in a way that's going to get you to resurrect your old self, how you built this business, how you built your brand. And let's go challenge you to do that. Let's create some new life experiences. Let's go out there and go on LinkedIn. Let's go spruce up your profile. By the way, let's get a picture on there. Because, if you don't have a picture on LinkedIn, it doesn't work. We all know that. You haven't updated your bio in 6 months. That's a problem. Okay. Your LinkedIn profile is about 3/4 full. You have no recommendations, no nonprofit contributions. You have no one giving you likes. So the average person's not going to really be intrigued by your brand because of your LinkedIn profile. So let's start there. Let's create that life experience. So John goes and creates a whole new LinkedIn profile, just updates it. It's simple, easy. Now they see the people are responding. Hey, love the picture. Hey, love what you're doing. Hey, I had no idea you're part of that nonprofit, right? The belief starts shifting. It's like, wow, that's all I had to do. Invest a half hour, update my LinkedIn profile. Now I've got something that people want to look at and I can feel excited about. What's happening with John? His beliefs are shifting, his behavior is shifting, and he's getting different results. People are connecting with him. He's expanding his network. People are getting him compliments. It's a simple thing. I teach that in my LinkedIn seminars. I'm just giving you a tidbit because I know there's anybody out there on LinkedIn. Those are things that are probably relevant to you if you've got a little stale or rusty with your LinkedIn. So that's the mindset. Before we go on, a quick pause. Any questions? Any thoughts? This is where he gets to chime in. We have anything out there, Tracy? Any questions, thoughts?
We do have a really good count on LinkedIn. We have over 100 people tuning in right now, so I'm sure they're going to be pouring in.
Okay, I like it.
Some questions. We give people a minute here to just kind of throw their questions in the chat or online there. What I love about this work is that it's so like real-time processing, right? Like even the questions and examples that you've put forward, I'm sure everybody here, we can think of like a recent one probably today that's happened, right?
Yeah. It's funny. When I held up my phone, I noticed somebody had texted me. So I have some people who knew I was doing this. So somebody had actually texted me a question. So let me see what the question was.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mark said, he asked me, so if I have a really long-standing behavior, how do I change it? A
Mhm.
long-standing behavior, how do I change it? So long-standing behavior, I assume that means like, a bad habit. Could be smoking. It could be sleeping in, overeating. Those are things that take place typically that are maybe drawing on. It could be procrastination. I'll give you a couple of things. There's a list I'll give you towards the end. And by the way, the beauty of ChatGPT, and this is not about that. I teased it a little bit on LinkedIn. Hey, if you want to see some updated stuff using AI and ChatGPT, tune in because I'm going to mention it. I use ChatGPT, the newer versions of it that I've been playing with more and more to supplement and help. And the reason why it's great is because it's real time. So it just happens to be ChatGPT was born on my birthday, November 22nd. That was in 2022, by the way. I'm a little bit older than that. And I followed it for November and December and January, and I didn't like it. I was pushing back on it, and I felt myself being that old dog, not wanting to learn new tricks. And I had enough people that were in my corner, a lot of my digital marketers, my buddies that are way smarter than me, said, Mike, it's January. I think it was 15th. We're at an event that year. You need to give this thing a hug and love on it hard. Forget your limiting beliefs. This has got to change. It's not going backwards. Just dive in and do it. And that's what I started doing. But ChatGPT is such a great tool. So what I did last night, and even as early as this morning, is I went and looked at a couple prompts about this topic. And I actually compared it because I save all my chats, all my prompts from way back. The prompts are massively different on the same topic that they were in November, December of 22 than they are now. That's why it's great because it's almost like keeping your fingers on the pulse. What are people saying? What are they thinking? Because it's learning itself, not just by inputs and what's out there on the ether, right? The internet. So a lot of this stuff is not changed. I've been teaching the success equation for a long time. But when it comes to a behavior, the biggest thing that I say, let's call public speaking is another one that comes up a lot. You got to do something massively different than that fear itself. Like people who have fear of heights, go skydiving. People are like, oh my gosh, Mike, you're crazy. I've actually done this with a few clients before. I know it works because of this equation right here. Something new. They had to get to the plane and get up there and fall out. I was there. I was in San Diego. I remember it happening. I don't think my friend Chris is here today to acknowledge it, but I know she remembers it very vividly. Falling from the sky and landing and running to me, grabbing me and say, oh my gosh, and crying, because it's a fear she's had her whole life. This is, a woman, late 40s at the time, and wanted to get up and do it again. She created a life experience, immediately doing the event, shifted the belief, and the behavior changed. And now that fear thing that's happened because you immediately addressed it. So if you're not seeing the inside of a gym, you go to the gym tonight. Go for an hour, sit on the treadmill and go crush out some sweat. You're going to hate me. You're like, oh man, my body's not ready. I haven't been inside of here in a while. Go sit in the steam, calm yourself down, breathe, meditate, and think about how great it feels. You're not in shape. The scale's still there. It's not lying to you. Public speaking. I'm a big fan. I have a lot of, professional comedians, celebrities that you would know that are comedians that I've worked with and coach in public speaking. And we share a lot of stories about storytelling, how to be on stage, timing and such. And we all agree that if you're afraid of public speaking, you should go find a comedy store somewhere in your neighborhood and go do a 5-minute set. Get up in front of a strange crowd for 5 minutes. Go think you're funny. You're probably not. People are probably not going to laugh, but you're going to do it. And you're going to get off that stage because you did something. You did a life experience. You'll shift your belief and you're going to behave differently. So, Mark, to your question, if you have anything out there, just pick that behavior and just go do 180 opposite, something overt act that's exactly the opposite, that thing you're probably afraid of, that thing you got to give it a hug, and you got to challenge yourself to do it. Because what's going to happen is the mind will shift, but the language will shift. That thing that was holy fill in the blank before is now like, oh my gosh, that's not as bad as I thought. So now there's more of a curiosity, like my friend wanted to go up and jump out of a plane again. Now, we didn't do it that day, by the way, but she was excited to go do that again because she did this equation. We didn't even have to talk about this equation. I just know how it works. If you create a new life experience, the beliefs, that's the way the brain works. It's like plasticity. You're changing the paradigm of the mind. So the brain's now seeing, oh man, this feels different. Oh wow, this is a different kind of sensory. It's kind of like a child when they're learning how to walk, how to run. I remember when both of my sons, we happened to catch both of them on camera, got lucky, their first steps, and we have it on video. It's so priceless. And you see my little guy take a step and another step, and you see his face like, oh my gosh, I am walking upright. This is at 13 months, I guess, for him. And it's all on camera. And you can see his brain just shift like, wow, I'm never going back down again. I'm going to keep walking upright. It's such a reality, but it's such a metaphor for the things that we do. So when you think about your habits or behaviors, just put them in the chat. I want to make sure we hit those before we go. All right, so let's hit the next one. These are how habits come about, of course. That's the last step. All right, so language. Now, these are 3 steps. I love this. And you could talk to your personal development friends, coaches, therapists will teach you this. This has been around for a while. Okay. It's kind of gone by the wayside, and I haven't lost it. I've used this on myself. I use it with all the people I work with, but it's 3 simple steps, right? You have to take personal inventory of your language. Personal inventory of your language. Now, the easiest way to do this is to grab your phone, and it doesn't matter what phone you have, you can record an audio file. And just turn on your audio files and just let it record, and just put it off in the background. Get on your phone calls, go about your day, like in your office. If you're doing a presentation, hit record, and then play it back. If you're like me, you're probably going to hate your voice, hate yourself on camera, all those things, right? And then you hear your words, not the ums and the ahs and the weird pauses. That's a different kind of language we're talking about cleaning up. It's the tries, the shoulds, the can'ts, the doubt that comes over you when you just speak. So the only way you can really take inventory is you have to catch yourself. You have to maybe ask other people, hey, what are some things I say or do that are aggravating? What are some of the things, maybe word choice, that when I say those things, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Ask your spouse. I know my wife, we've known each other for 22 years, married for 18, and she's a judge. So that helps me even more. She loves being the honorable Monica, right? Tell me what the words I'm using, right? Give me feedback. Now, I happen to live my life in that world of feedback, but sometimes you don't want to hear it. You just want your wife to be your wife. You want your business partners to be your partners. But if you're really going to work on yourself, you've got to take inventory of your language. And after you've done the step 1, it's becoming consciously aware or consciously competent, as I said. When you're consciously competent or consciously aware of the words, then you start to look differently. Now, this is another thing. ChatGPT is beautiful. I actually did it this morning. You can go in there and prompt it. Identify top 20 persuasive, positive words to create in my language. Enter, prompt. And you're going to see a lot of things in there, right? Belief, love, connection, contribution, help. These are words. They trigger things. So if you have a word that's not super positive, you can even write in there, say, find me the synonyms for the word powerful. Find me the synonyms of it. Say, hey, you know what? I use the word try a lot, or I use the word that's impossible a lot. ChatGPT, tell me 5 antonyms. That's the opposite, right? The opposite reminds us of the old school where we learn language. The antonyms, the opposite of the word impossible. It'll give you 5 words. You get the 5 words. Now you start using those words. Now, at the beginning, it's going to be weird, because people are going to say, wow, you're using the word fantastic a lot, or unbelievable, or extraordinary, or conscious. They're not used to hearing you say those things. They're used to, how's your day today? Oh, it was good. How's your day? When somebody asks you how your day today, just try it. When you get out of this meeting, come out, the first person that says, how's your day? Go, it's amazing. Or conscious. People are going to go, whoa, 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 what happened to you? What webinar did you just get off of, right? Or conscious, because they're not used to it. That's not something that's in your language pattern currently. They're used to you giving the average, it's okay, it's good. Or worse yet, like some folks in my family, I won't name names. I love her to death, but she's been my aunt for a little while. I always joke. She knows the story. She's just negative. I could ask her something that's really positive and she says things that are negative, right? That's just the way she was. But, she's gotten better. She's gotten better because she's more consciously aware. She's more consciously competent to these things. And instead of saying negative things initially, she stops and pauses and say, okay, I know what Mike's asking. He asks what's been going on great in February, January, February, March of 24. So the natural instinct was to say something that's negative or something that's not great, but the stop and the pause, that's a conscious awareness to stop and think, you know what? I do have a couple of things I want to share with you. There's a couple positive things that did happen. or consciously. Some people are wired that way. Now, you're not born that way per se. That's a learned behavior and it's genetic. So we call it nurture nature. Nurture nature. Nature is genetic, and then there's nurture, the things that you can learn. It could be upbringing. There's no doubt in my mind. I use words my dad used growing up. There's words my mom used growing up that I still use. It's like it became hardwired because I used it over and over again. What we say, repetition is the mother of skill. When you say something and do something over and over again, it just becomes a natural thing for you, right? So the third step is assess the effect of your language choice. The example of going up to somebody and say, when they ask you how you're doing, I'm amazing. Just watch how people respond. On the flip side, you could be in the best mood ever and somebody comes up and say, how's your day? And you say, you know, or consciously, I'm really depressed, actually. I'm really depressed. Or consciously, watch the reaction you get. People lean in. People are going to not know how to respond. They don't, are they to help you, hug you? Are they going to ask, hey, should I probe? Should I not probe? You want to create an awkward moment, just tell people. I joke when I do my live seminars, hey, how you doing today? And you give people a full report. Well, let's see here. Haven't slept in 2 days. I had 4 presentations this week. Kids are driving me crazy. My teenager's going through some stuff. People are like, whoa, 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 buddy, back up. I was just asking how you're doing. I know, I'm telling you. I'm telling you how, that's how I'm doing. That's authentic. People don't really want to hear that sometimes, right? TMI, too much information. So when you back up and say, you know, I'm going to be consciously aware of my words, not just for myself and the direction it's going to go, but how it impacts other people. All right? Quick pause. Questions, thoughts, or conscious thoughts, or conscious, 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 or conscious.
Yeah, we did have a couple come in here. So just kind of reading off here. Positivity breeds positivity. That was one of the comments that came
Love
in.
it.
Yeah. And it's so true too, what you say about like that language shift as well. Like, just think of our own organizational leader. You're like, hey, Todd, how's your day going? Unbelievable. Without a doubt, that'll be the answer. And it always invites more conversation, which is good.
You know, it's funny. So I work on the 7th floor of a building in the Biltmore here in Phoenix. And or consciously, when COVID hit, the building was pretty empty. I have my own office. So, I come and go as I please, protocols, wear the mask and whatnot. So the building has slowly but surely over the last couple of years come back. People come back into non-hybrid roles. Today I got on the elevator and there was 8 people in the elevator, which never happens. There's 6 elevators. So there's 3, different bays. And we all laughed. We're like, has you ever seen the elevator this full? Not even close. So I'm on the 7th floor. Almost every floor was there, like a 4th floor guy, 5th floor. I was 7. There was 8, 9, 10. And this one guy, I don't even know who he is, but he was kind of at the front when I got in. And every single person that got off the elevator, he goes, hey, have a great day. Or conscious, hey, have a great day. And then he kind of mixed up, hey, have a fantastic day. Hey, great seeing you. And I'm thinking, does this guy know everybody? As I don't know this guy from anybody. I'm thinking, what's he going to say to me when I get up on the 7th floor? And he looked at me and he goes, hey, have a good day. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. Like, I don't even know this guy, but now I do. He's branded himself. I'm looking for this guy in the elevator next time I see him because that's not something that's normal. And, you look at it naturally, you go, okay, is he being real? Is he not being real? Is he just so blissfully happy because something's happened? You put all that aside. My rule number 1 is don't judge, be curious. Don't judge, be curious. You have to be curious. When you're curious about people, when you're curious about things, it suspends judgment. It's such a powerful thing that sometimes we forget is that concept, right? Just being curious. All right, so let's go. We'll keep the questions coming in the chat. We keep motoring through. So, all right, so I want to go through or consciously. So these are updated, by the way. I went and checked my work last night at midnight. So I've been toggling with these 8 or so for a while, and these are patterns. Think of them like challenging, right? Things that are results or negative patterns that most people have. And again, you can use a Google search. There's plenty of articles on these. But I thought it was interesting because I didn't make these up. I literally cut and pasted these out of 4 different studies and or chats. I prompted GPT a little bit. I prompted Google a little bit and to make sure I was real time. I didn't want to make sure I was using old material. And then this is in no particular order. So don't think, okay, number 8 is lack of goals. That's number 8 compared to number 1. That's not true. But if you think about these 8 that I identified, what do you see here? Negative self-talk, negative thinking patterns. Again, this is before I already had this topic or conscious, right? So I'm not even trying to find things to reaffirm. I just said, hey, tell me what are some of the top patterns that people are struggling with. I don't remember the exact prompt. I have it saved, but this is what came up. somehow, some way, they are tying back to these three things. If you look at poor time management that's a behavior. That's a behavior issue. That's also a belief issue. Okay, now you can isolate, cut hairs, and go, well, Mike, is it really a belief issue or is it behavior? Well, here's the rule. Beliefs drive behaviors. So if you have a bad behavior called you're always late or you're really not good at time management, there's probably a belief behind it. The belief is, well, things are on my time. I'll get there when I get there. Hey, you know what? I'm an important person in this company. I started this company. These people work for me. I'll show up when I want to show up. Or consciously, no wonder people think that you can just come and go as you please because that's your belief. So you showing up late to meetings is normal. That's a behavior that exudes because your belief system as such, right? So lack of goal setting, not shocking there. You've heard, or Coach Sinek has talked about this here, his colleague. Simon's great. I mean, he came up with the golden circle years and years ago. At first, it was like a TED Talk. He just wrote on a dry erase board. If you go back and find it, it's like one of his first TED Talks before he became like the modern day Simon Sinek. And he wrote a big circle on the dry erase board. He said, everybody can tell you the outer perimeter. Here's what we do. Or what do you do for a living? And you can tell it. And then he goes to the next circle inside of that. He says, tell me how you do it. And then everyone can explain that. And then the bullseye, the third question in the middle, the linchpin, the thing that made him famous, right? Lead with your why. What's your why? Or no wonder people struggle with the purpose and the why. I ask this question all the time of people. These are people who've been through seminar and personal development. These are leaders of companies. And I say, what is your driving force? Or conscious force? Is that my purpose or my why? I don't know. I mean, what gets you out of bed? What do you lose sleep over? When you go to bed, when you're basically in an unconscious state, what are you dreaming about in your stress state? Those are the things that are usually trigger. So the things that are getting you out of bed, things that get you fired up, those are the compelling things that get you going the direction you want to go. There's usually something there that you can draw from. But when you think about these things, if you haven't already identified one, that was my question to you up front. What's the one thing at the very beginning that you want to identify? Here's an area where you can start here. Just pick one of these and say, what are some of those patterns or behaviors that you're currently running on yourself, and identify one of those things. All right? Or consciously. Now, I love this. Be to have is a very or conscious conversation. I've had this with so many of my colleagues. Gosh, I was just listening to a podcast the other day. I can't remember. It was Jordan. I can't remember who it was. And he was talking about this topic of be, do, have. You know, what comes first in time? If you haven't heard it, be, do, have. I'll share it with you, kind of the age-old way of looking at it and how you can think of it as a walk away today. So these are I have the three puzzle pieces in the mind because these are three things that we struggle with. So be is like the base word of a lot of things, right? Your belief system, your being. Like when we say human being, human is like the skin bag you live in. I joke about that, right? It's just physical matter. And then how you be, that's the being part. I always thought that the word human being should be two words, not one word. It's human is the physical self. The being is how you show up. So that's what be is, right? How you show up. The be is the behavior. That's another BE word, right? Then you have do. Do are the things that you do. Like you think of your job, for example. You might be a man. You might be a Christian. You might be Canadian. These are things that you be because that's who you are. It's unchangeable. But you can say, well, what do I do? Well, what do I do? Well, I'm a sales manager. I'm a CEO. I'm a leader of a company. I'm a startup investor. I'm PEO. I do all these different things that build companies. Whatever you do, and then you have the things you have, money, an office, a car, the things that are tangible, the things that you have. So the argument goes, well, which of these three is the most important? And I'm here to tell you that the answer is up to you. I know people to this day that even know be, do, have, and they say it's what I have. I grew up poor. I didn't have anything growing up, and I made a vendetta to myself and the world that I was going to go out produce, out crush, have everything I possibly can, change the history of my family, and it's all about the neighborhood I live in, the house I live in, the car I drive, the watch on my wrist, because have is so important to me. Okay, great. I'm not a have person personally, but I understand that point of view because that person has life experiences that dictate that. So if that person were to change their belief, change their language around it, they might get into a different type of place. That's classic scarcity mindset. Scarcity is when you came from nothing and you live your life accordingly. Like I came from nothing, so I'm going to live what I have and I'm always going to worry that like the hammer's going to fall and I'm going to lose everything. I know a lot of leaders like that. They're not risk takers. So risk takers are very abundant. They know it's going to work out. They believe BE, right? They believe in themselves. So it doesn't matter what they do or what they have. They go back to their being because they're very being types of creatures. So here's my spin on it. If you have a tendency to focus on the have, or even what you do, it could be your title, it could be the things you do in the community. Challenge yourself to back up to the equation at the beginning and say, I need to work on who I be. If I can work on who I be, I know that's not proper English, but you get my point. Who I be. Who I be is how I show up on a daily basis, how I talk to myself, how I exhibit my expression, who I hang around. You've heard this before. You are the summary of 5 people that you hang around the most. If you want to know who you are, just go find the 5 people you spend the most time with. Family does count. I don't need to meet you. Just give me your 5 people and give me a half hour of each one. I'll surmise who you are. So when you ask questions of yourself, instead of asking the wrong questions of why am I not where I need to be, or what's wrong with me? Why does this continue to happen? That's self-talk, 1,200 words a minute. You got to flip the script and say, okay, what's grateful? What am I grateful for? What am I looking forward to? What do I need to learn? What language do I need to shift? What do I need to be in order to be a CEO? I just got overlooked in a company position possibly. And you say, wow, I just got passed over for that title that I really, really wanted. Well, who did you be the last year or 2 prior to that? And who were they? Who were they being? They got it. You didn't. So maybe there's something there in the B part that you need to work on. So my coaching is always start with the B, then you go to the do and the have. If you really work on your B, the have will get there. You will have money. You'll have abundance. You'll have the neighborhood you want to live in. You'll have happy children if you focus on who you're being and how you show up on a daily basis. Such an important thing that we often overlook. So I want to bring up B do have. I know my veteran personal development people, it's refreshing when you're hearing that. You're like, oh, yes, be do have. I haven't heard that in so long, but it's still relevant. It's still relevant because we spend too much time, especially with social media, Instagram. And guys, I'm on this stuff because I have to. I'm a marketer. I got to push myself out there. Now, I'm not the level of like Gary Vaynerchuk, or some of the players that just have people with a camera crew following them everywhere and posting all the time. That's not the way I play. Most of my agreements are private, big corporate contracts. I do have a part of me in my marketing that's in the public domain. I do public events. I do things like this. So I am marketing myself, but I also know that there's this thing called a like or not a like or a hater on Instagram. I love it when I hear celebrities' belief systems about posting. I heard one from Jennifer Lopez recently. She said, I don't read comments. I post what I post and I don't read them. You know how many people are going to say hateful things towards her or be jealous because whether you like J-Lo or not, hey, she's doing pretty good. She's doing pretty good. And she came from nothing, by the way. If you go back and look at her story and who she had to be and what she had to do to get to what she has, it's a pretty remarkable story. But that's a good belief to have. If you're going to post something, just don't read the comments. It's a great technique. I've learned how to do it. It's good. It's not easy, but it's a good little technique. All right. So these are my my favorites. Again, I went last night and I cross-checked. I think this one was there were six different researches I did on this one to make sure I got most up to date. These are the most common language patterns, or I guess, well, there are language patterns, but when you say things, watch your words. When you say things like I wish, or I should have, I would have, I could have, I can't, I might, I have to, I'll try, or if. Now, if I'm going to put a caveat on this. I love the word if there's qualifiers behind it. But if you get a place where you're saying, well, if that were to happen, you're already presuming that it's not going to happen. That's what I mean by this. So you want to think about how you might use these. These are prompts for you to help you. That's my goal in these is takeaways. So if you find yourself saying some of these things, you got to think about, well, what's the opposite of wishing? What's the opposite of can't? What's the opposite of I have to or I'll try? Obviously, we all know this. Yoda said it first in Star Wars. I'm a big Star Wars fan. There's no try. It's only do. You either do or do not. And I know that's been used so many times, but I remember when I first watched that movie, I actually listened to that as a kid and thought, wow, this little green creature is kind of smart. Like, there's no try, only do. Either do it or you don't, right? So it's how you frame it. But these are so important to keep in mind when you're going through your inventory when it comes to language. All right. So let's pause. Questions, thoughts, inputs. What I'd love to hear, and I want you to, if I'm going to ask you kind of a poll question, and without asking the poll, but if you think that being the B person is who you are, what you want to be, just if you could, For people on the webinar, just put a 1. If you're more of that second, you tend to focus your energy on the do, a 2. And then if it's a have, it's a 3. Be honest with yourself. It's okay. Your name's on it. This is the whole point. Be sharing, be honest with yourself. Most people don't sit at 1. I've done this so many times. It's the small percentage of people who put a 1 and said, I am a B person. I focus on who I be. And this is time spent in your mind's eye, right? If you know that you spend a lot of time on number 2, because you're thinking about what you do every day, got to get the kids to school, got to show up, got to get that PowerPoint out. You spend most of your time on the do stuff. That's normal, because that's just reacting to the day. And if it's the have stuff, there's nothing wrong with that, because you should be proud of it. Like that story of the guy growing up with nothing. He spends so much time being proud of the things that he has. But the beautiful part about that story is there was a shift there, right? Somebody having conscious awareness to say, you know what, I need to back up the equation. I spend so much time thinking about the third point or the second point and not focusing enough time on the first point. Who I be day in, day out. Who I be day in, day out. All right. So let's open it up for questions. We're almost wrapped up here, guys. We're coming up at the 52-minute mark. I'm pretty much done. I have a couple, my contact information is on the last slide, but I would say the choice is yours. If you want to create habits, if you want to continue those habits, but I would isolate that one thing that I said at the very beginning. What's the one thing that must change in your company, in yourself, and just make a commitment, make a proclamation. Get out of this meeting and go out to your E-team, to your leaders and say, that's it. We got to embrace this change. We got to make this change, whatever it is. It's no longer a should, it's a do. It's a commitment we have to throw in on. So when you catch yourself in that mindset of struggling with something, just use that change voice, right? The choice voice. All right, questions.
Yeah, we got a couple, and I can't say enough good things, Mike. That's great webinar, some wonderful insights. And I feel like this question might actually fall in that language side of things.
Yep.
So verbatim, how can you approach someone who lacks self-awareness but could benefit from change without offending them?
Yeah. So I try to, what I do in that moment is I strive towards, number one, who I'm being. I'm being loving, I'm being caring, I'm being authentic. So I have to be in a place of being caring for the person. It's not accusatory. It's not, I said, they said, right? I kind of find the moment where I can get into that moment where the person's open. So I like to get to that place. Now, I'm not a fan of this language pattern. Hey, can I give you some constructive feedback? Not good language patterns, right? People immediately resist, push it back. They don't want to hear constructive feedback. They don't even want your opinion or inputs. Okay, that doesn't work. Just get rid of that language. It doesn't work. Okay, so when you do it, it's in a loving way. Here's how I do it. So I would say, hey, Tracy, you know what? I was thinking about you. We did that webinar last week, and I was thinking about how much I appreciated, you calmed me down. You made me feel at ease before we got into the event, before I got to do my thing. And I was thinking about that, and I really appreciate you. And I was thinking about something that you said in the webinar, and I wanted to ask you about it. And now I isolate the behavior, and I bring the thing up. It could be something you said. I'm making this up, by the way, team. Tracy didn't do anything. She was awesome. She's the one that's been helping me. It's a role play. I isolate the behavior, and I isolate that thing that they do or they say. You said something that a language that just stuck with me, and I wanted to bring it to your attention to get your opinion on it. Is this something that you think? Is it something you believe? Is that something that you think that just drives you? I'm just curious. That's the method. So you're affirming the identity authentically, you're not but terrible language pattern. And then you transition into the behavior. The behavior in this situation is someone is just negative. They say bad things. They're always focusing on the problem, not the solution. Okay, that's the isolate. And then you end it with curiosity. I'm just curious. And then you get to step back and let them fill the space, because they're probably not aware of it. You're now bringing it to their conscious awareness and saying, look, you said something and I picked up on it and I'm just curious about it. Help me understand.
And that's wonderful. Like, even in this hypothetical situation, like, I can notice on myself, I'm like, oh, interesting. What was it? Like, I'm bought in already, and I want to have this conversation with you. I want to know, what did you notice? And yes, let's have a conversation about it. And it's totally different.
Yep.
Might have time for just one more question
That's
here.
good.
So,
Let's do it.
we have a client. I have a client that is struggling with losing weight. They have a mindset that it is hard and that they've failed many times in the past. We've worked on their why, starting small and getting momentum and strategies for dealing with the stress that leads to the unhealthy eating. Do you have any suggestions?
Yep. Usually, and I'll pick any, this is, weight is the question, but this is a global answer for anything that's behavioral. The person is not emotionally associated enough about the reason, the purpose, and the purpose and the why. I've seen so many coaches and bosses, like leaders, they get people to write a purpose and a why statement, and they get them to think about it, repetitive, right? PDR, practice or rehearse it, self-talk it, meditate it. That's great. That helps you reinforce new language, language pattern belief. But it's really getting people associated to it. Associated means they understand the pleasure of it and the pain of it. So it goes like this. And I've done this a lot in my coaching as a method. So you gotta be careful. This method is very serious. So you have to do it from a loving place. So when you challenge somebody, say, look, I know that we've talked about your purpose and your why, John, and I see you making results. Like you're kind of like up and down. You get to the gym for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and you struggle with your weight. Look, I'm not speaking to the genetics. People have genetic things. We all know that. Let me be clear here today. So a doctor could tell you, hey, you have a propensity for certain things because you're obese. That's not what I'm talking about here today. I'm talking about behaviors. So when somebody's not, they're up and down. They go to the gym, they eat, they don't eat. You got to get them emotionally associated. So if you ask that person, let's say they have kids, and you ask John, say, John, what would it mean to you? There's that word again, mean. What would it mean to you to lose 30 pounds and be the guy that you want to be, the best version of yourself, and be the role model for your kids? What would that mean to you? Go ahead and tell me. And they'll tell you. Oh man, that would be awesome. Like, I can't even picture that. It's something that would just be awesome for my kids, my teenagers. Great. And I want you to picture that in your mind's eye, John. I want you to picture it. Go put it on your dry erase board. Create an image of yourself. Post a picture of yourself on your fridge of you when you're in your fighting weight. Now, here's the hard question, John. What would it say about you as a father? And they'll tell you, don't change this. And you continue to be like overweight and you don't change. What does that say to your kids? I'm curious. And they'll tell you. And they'll tell you, wow, that conversation hurts. It stings. I've had it happen to me. I've had 2 or 3 coaches in my life that have called me out. These are friends that I love. And I remember them all vividly because they use that method on me. They called me out and said, Mike, what does it mean to you? What kind of message are you sending your kids? What kind of message are you as a coach? I had my own coach in 1999. This was Tony Robbins' chief coach, Robert Alderman. God bless him. He's up in heaven now. And he said, Mike, anytime that you're going to say or do or be all these things that we teach, and you're not willing to do it yourself, I'm going to get you associated, emotionally associated to your purpose and your why. That's the positive. And I'm going to get you associated to the negative so we can stay in the middle. We don't need to feel extreme pain and we don't need extreme pleasure, but you understand the lanes, like bowling, the gutter. Okay. And if you don't do those things, I want you to write down a word, pull out your journal and your pen, and I want you to write it down. Walking fraud. And they'll tell you you're going to be, you're a walking fraud. You're a walking fraud. If you're going to call yourself a coach, a speaker, a dad, or any of these things, and you're not willing to do these things, be those things, and do those things, there's no way you're going to have those things. So anytime you think, you know what, I'm not going to the gym today, just go ahead and let it go in your head. Walking fraud, walking fraud. Okay, you're going to go create this game plan for your teammates and hold them accountable in sales or management, but you're going to let people off the hook. What does that say about you as a coach? Walking fraud, walking fraud. Guys, I learned this in 1998, 99. That's still a language pattern in my head. So when I feel like I'm a little bit off, a little bit, pain, pleasure, I stay back in my lane because I don't want to go into the gutter and say, you know what, if I don't do this or hold somebody accountable or commit to a plan, whether it's 30 days, a goal, being somewhere, being my word, then I'm just going to be a walking fraud. So that's some bonus material. That's very personal to me. My kids kind of know about that. I don't hammer that term because it's more my language patterns. That doesn't mean much to them, but it's something that means something to me. So Robert, when he was here on earth, he blessed me with that phrase to check me, to remind me that when I'm not being the best version of myself, there's a cautionary tale there that I could be in a position called being a walking fraud. So you got to get that person emotionally associated to what it is to do it and what it means to not do it, and have a very blunt, honest, loving conversation. And that's going to help make the difference. Good stuff. All right, team. Good stuff. I know we're right at the hour mark. I want to say thank you so much. I'm so blessed to have this opportunity to share. I hope you got one idea. That's my hope. My contact information is here. Much of my website, MikeLindstrom.com. I got my YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I accept them all. So you don't have to worry about fail or failure. I accept all LinkedIns because I love connecting with people. And I appreciate the inputs, good, bad, or indifferent. All feedback's good feedback. So Tracy, thanks so much for helping me guide and do this. And I hope that people will tune in. Feel free to share it.
Honestly, Mike, sincere pleasure. This was such a delight today, and I'd be surprised if anyone walked away with anything less than one takeaway from this. Just for those that are tuning into the call, just a reminder, Mike Lindstrom is actually a speaker with Vistage Worldwide, which is through our affiliation as Tech Canada as well. So for those Tech Canada members on the call today who would love to see Mike at one of their upcoming speaker sessions or group meetings into the 2025 year, or any tech chairs that are interested to, make sure if you're a member, connect with your chair, and if you're a chair, connect with your speaker planning team, that you could benefit from these insights, and look forward to next steps. So,
and by the way, I do come to Canada. I get people calling me, hey, I have a passport. I know how to get on an airplane.
yeah.
I was in Toronto last year, BC last year. I love coming to Canada. I'd love to come visit y'all.
Yeah, we'd love to see you too. Thanks everybody, and thanks so much, Mike, for your time
Take
today.
care. Have a good one. Take care.
Bye.